Greetings, my name is Rudimentary Rob. Welcome to Astroneer. I know you normally see me doing a lot of Valheim videos, but I thought I'd give this one a go for a bit of a change of pace. As you can see from some of those save games, yeah, this is not my first time in Astroneer. So I thought I'd just have a bit of a basic go of how to get started in Astroneer, and then if anyone's interested in, seeing the game progress, I'll be happy to record some extra episodes. And just leave a comment down below if you want to see more, and I will be more than happy to, pick up where I left off and see what else we can explore in this game. Now, with every new game of Astroneer, you always land with your little pod, and you go through these basic little missions or quests to, unlock a few recipes kind of for free, to get some free equipment, which is probably the main reason I do it. It saves you a lot of resource gathering. And yeah, it's a lot of fun. Big difference to playing Valheim. I mean, this is kind of a survival game because you can die, but there's not really any downside to dying other than the prospect of losing the contents of what's on your backpack there. So, we're going to get straight into it. It's that sort of a game. We've literally just arrived, and that has actually completed a quest. So, we're getting ourselves a free small printer. And, we just set that one up. The next mission involves just plugging it in. And you can do that just by connecting the cable like that. It's a lot of just, click and activate, click on or highlight and then hold the F key. That's my sort of default binding. I'm not sure if that's the original default. Honestly, I've had Astroneer installed for so long I've forgotten what the actual defaults are. So the key bindings do show up on the screen for what my key bindings are, but you do get a fair bit of control over them. So if my key bindings aren't really working for you, then you're more than welcome to, pick what does. If you decide to play the game yourself. Now, we're ripping through a couple of the early missions quite quickly here. Look, you can sort of pause the video if you like just to see what's on the screen, but the first couple of missions are very basic, using a tether. Once you've got a packet of tethers on you, you just press T and it puts one on the ground. And I'm just going to demonstrate that now. And this is how you make sure you don't suffocate. Now, minor spoiler, I do give a fairly convincing demonstration of what suffocation looks like, so stay tuned for that one later in the episode. In Astroneer, I'm going to categorize this as a Magpies game because there are so many little things around, so many things you can interact with, so many things you can pick up. General rule of thumb, anytime you see debris like this, you should have a good look at it because you'll find abandoned backpacks and solar panels and wind generators and, oxygen filters like this or batteries. Quite a lot of it very early in the game is extremely useful. So, yeah, if in doubt, bring it back to base, and then if you don't use it, that's fine. But if you do need it and you left it on the other side of the planet, well, yeah, Anyway, we've got ourselves some more missions. One of the mission is to gather 4 resin. Now, to do any gathering of resources, like mining, basically, you press, in my case, I'm pressing E to bring out the mining gun, and then I'm just left-clicking. And something they did add to the game quite a while ago, because it never used to give you a hint where, or if there was more resources in the direction that you're mining. Thank heavens they added that in, because I'm sure in those early days of Astroneer, I left a lot of resources behind just because I was really unlucky and I didn't hit them. But now you get the little icon for the resource type will appear above your little arrow on the tool to tell you if there is any more of a resource in that direction. Now, I look to have mined out all of the resin here because I'm not... Oh, hang on, missed a bit. Alright, and now the little yellow marker's basically gone. We can essentially work out that the resin here is basically mined out, which is fine. You'll usually find nodes like that where there's not a lot and it's very spread out. Other times you will get nodes where, you know, it'll take you 3 seconds of mining to get, you know, 1 or 2 lumps of whatever it is that you're trying to mine. Now, if it seems like I'm doing an awful lot of talking, it is going to be a bit like that this episode. So hopefully the drone of my voice does not irritate too much, because there's a lot to take in with this game just to get you through the early stages. After a while, a lot of the basic mechanics just become second nature, and I can focus more on, you know, the long-term goals in the game. So we're still working on that first mission of resource gathering, which is we need 4 compound, which is the grey one, and we need 4 resin, which is the yellow one. And they are your basic building materials. You will find those pretty much everywhere. Unlike some of the other resources in the game, which will be limited to certain biomes, so, you know, mountains, for example, or they might be limited to underground or in the mantle of the planet. Now, anybody who doesn't know terminology for, you know, astronomy, I am an amateur astronomer. I might be a little bit rusty, but I still remember most of it. Mantle is like near the core of the planet. And you might think, oh, do we have to dig down that far? Well, you don't have to. But you're going to find a good part of the Astroneer storyline will involve a fair bit of heading towards the middle of the planet. But I'll explain that and expand on that in future episodes if you want me to go ahead and, you know, keep progressing this save. In the meantime, you can just listen to the sound of me mining quietly for a moment. Oh yeah, and before we get too far into this game, little tip for anybody who hasn't, you know, learnt the hard way in games like Minecraft. But this is another game where you definitely do not want to mine straight down. Yeah, obvious downsides with going straight down is if you fall into a cavern, and trust me, there is a lot of caverns in these planets, you can find yourself out of range of your tether, and it can take a hot minute to build up enough of a ramp to get you back up to the surface. And if you don't have very much oxygen with you, you're probably going to die down there. So, yeah, just an FYI. Now, you will see me running around and scanning these little growths that appear on these plants. Ultimately, technology in Astroneer is unlocked by researching samples, and that's what the little green and multicolored things are. on the side of these little sort of shrubs. They're not the only way you can get science and research points. These big lumpy things here, I'll come back for that one later, but those big lumpy ones, you can't scan those with your hand tool because they're too big. A little bit later, we'll build a sciencey, researchy type workstation, and that is what will it'll basically research everything that you put into it. So the big stuff, we're not gathering that just yet. We're gonna pick those up later this episode, and I'll show you how that side of the research works. Oh yeah, and remember what I said about suffocating and giving you a very accurate demonstration of what it looks like? Yep, feast your eyes. I was a bit further off my tether line than I remembered, and honestly, I think I was about half a second from expiring right next to a tether line, but I made it back in time. The phases for when you run out of oxygen, you will be able to run for a short period, but then it will limit you to walking. So if you get a long way off your tether line and you've already run out of oxygen, yeah, it can be a bit of a coin toss in terms of whether or not you're going to make it back before you expire. So I mean, long story short, it's best to keep a spare set of tethers with you and just keep putting them out. And then that way you'll never run out of oxygen. I'm just being a little bit lazy with it at the start because materials are a bit of a premium. And I want to get as much of an early base set up in this episode as I can. So I'm doing it for the viewer, if you like. Oh, and a very quick demo on the backpack. The top horizontal bar is your oxygen supply. The middle bar down the middle is your battery supply. If you are on a tether line, both will regenerate from the tether. If you go off tether, then you are limited to whatever you have in your backpack in terms of power and oxygen. Now, this early in the game, you're not going to run out of battery that much. More often than not, you are going to be running out of oxygen long before you run out of battery. But as you progress the game, you'll unlock mods for the drill. So that's the gun I'm using at the moment. And some of those mods can be a little bit thirsty on their power usage, and that's where your battery on your backpack becomes a lot more relevant, and it becomes more likely that you will actually run out of juice at some stage, sometimes even while you're on a tether. So, yeah, anyway, that's the backpack. I'm not actually hitting a button to open the backpack. I honestly can't even remember what the keybind is. Most of the time, like everything else in the game, I just click on it to bring it to the front. When you've got it open, you can also equally click to bring the gun out as well. That was me just demonstrating that there are some aggressive plants in this game. That one just kind of flicks you away. So unless you got really unlucky and you got pinballed between 2 or 3 of them, you're not likely to get killed by them. They're just an annoyance, really. Although they may knock you into a hole, and at that stage they would become a lot more than just an annoyance. With tethers, speaking of annoyances, with tethers you'll find situations where you'll have multiple packets of tethers that are, half used or more on your backpack. You can extract the tethers out of one and then to pick them up into your backpack, which will then add to your other incomplete set of tethers. You just click once to pick the item up off the ground, and you just click E, and that will add it to your backpack. And in the case of, you know, items that are multiples, like tethers, it will try and add it to an incomplete set before it starts a new one. In the case of, like the materials, they're just a one-off, so they'll always go in their own slot. All right, now we're actually starting to set up a base here, and you get these platforms. They come in lots of different sizes and whatnot. But to get power to the platforms, you've got to be able to plug them into a power source, or put a power source on them. But then if there's a power source on them, you're going to want to connect them to other platforms that have your printers or whatever plugged into them. So you'll end up daisy chaining a lot of platforms together as part of creating your base. Now, the little medium platforms that we've got there, they're not particularly useful. I mean, they have their moments, but most of the time I don't use them. You'll see me create a larger platform here in a little bit, and that larger platform is so much more useful because the central part of it is big enough to take most of the large, actually I think it takes all of the large printer and processing units, and it gives you two little side bits where you can hold resources so that you can automate the machines more easily if you want to. Alright, just knocking out a quick little quest here to make the small generator. This thing is kind of fairly wasteful, but earlier in the game it is handy, just to, particularly if you haven't, been out, or you just haven't been very lucky with trying to find solar panels and wind generators. There's plenty of greenery around on Sylvia, and so you can just harvest the green stuff, and it takes 1 unit of the green material, the organic, and that will run the generator for, I don't know, it's a minute or two. It's enough to make things run a bit quicker. The little hab unit there does generate a little bit of power, but we've reached the point sort of now-ish where it's enough to get things moving, but not to get things done quickly. Now you'll see there's a little power graph around where the plugs are, and as soon as I started that printer up, you can see it went from all yellow to now it's like 50% red. Now, if there's any red in your little power meter next to your plug, it means you're short that much power. So the yellow is what you've got, and the red represents what you need. And you can measure this all out because it's all done in, units of power. Most of the gear at this level is usually only 1 unit of power per item kind of thing. But a lot of the printers and the research and things like that actually draw a lot more than that. And so we're now very quickly getting into an area where we're going to have to be a bit careful about how many different machines we have running. I mean, they'll all keep running, but if they're not getting a minimum amount of power, quite a lot of them will just stop completely rather than just running very slowly. So, yeah, a little bit of power management, but it's not rocket science. You can sort of muddle your way through, and then yeah. Now, this little arrangement of plants here, I'm not sure I remember seeing it before, but I can see that this looks to be sort of pumpkin-esque, which would tell me that this is actually part of the Halloween event for this year. I haven't done these events for a while, so anyone who's more up to speed might be able to leave a comment down below and just let me know how some of these newer events work. This one seems to be like some sort of a recipe table, because I mouse over it and it says I can change recipes, so I'm not sure how that's going to work exactly, but look, if we get to a point where, you guys want me to push down that road rather than advancing the storyline, just let me know in the comments below and I'll be happy to do that. I haven't actually run a lot of the exoplanet events. Most of the time I use the platform just to get different materials. I think I've done a Christmas one once or twice, and I think I've maybe done an Easter one once. So most of the events unlock cosmetics, and there is a lot of sort of cosmetics that you can get fairly easily in this game. I mean, just progressing the game will give you new suits and new color schemes. So if you like that sort of thing, sometimes that's the only motivation you need to just keep going and going and going. But I mean, it's a very adorable game. It's got some very cute stuff. It's a reasonably easy to play. The interface is not for everyone. It's a little bit of a, if you can drive a tank and the turret at the same time, this game you probably get your head around it fairly quickly. If you're not used to, looking and running in two different directions with slightly different controls than what you would normally have, it's probably going to take you a period just to adjust. But I'm pretty sure I went through that a little bit when I first started playing Astroneer as well. And look, you've seen how clumsy I get in Valheim. There will definitely be moments like that in this game as well. But it's a lot of fun. It's very light. If you're on a tether line, honestly, you can AFK for hours and hours and hours in this game and you're not going to die. So it's far more casual and it's very much take it at your own speed. So yeah, let me know what you think. We've still got a little bit more in this episode. And early in the game, if you're a clean freak, you're going to spend a lot of time with your eye twitching, because the only way to really do things is to just, throw it on the ground so that you've got making more room in your backpack. If you want to be super OCD, yeah, you can make these little holders and load them up if you want to, but of course that takes resources. So because I'm trying to get as much as I can in this first episode, hopefully I'm not triggering anyone by leaving all of this debris on the ground. Yeah, I may have been a little bit overzealous printing the large printer this early. I'd forgotten that most of what I make at this point actually just comes off that medium printer, but I'm going to end up making a large printer eventually, and why not just do it now? Now that that's out of the way, we're going to move on and start making the other things that we need, which would be the research chamber, and then we also need a furnace. We won't be using the furnace straight away, but it's not going to take very long before we start getting the materials that will need to be smelted, and that's what the furnace is for. Now, if you remember our big lumpy friend that we ran past earlier, and I'm circling, there's a little sort of odd shape in the trunk there in the distance. The trees actually have these lumpy things that you can pick up. These are the big research samples, and this is what the research chamber is going to need. And that's why I've got that large platform over there ready to go. The research chamber, you can pop the big ones into it and it will research them. It'll research some of the smaller stuff as well, but honestly, there's no difference between researching, on your tool, like, just holding F on it, or dropping it into the research chamber. It all seems to result in the same outcome. Now, those little crystally things that I just clicked on, you're going to find quite a lot of those. It gives off this rather interesting effect when you activate it. It's been a while, so I can't actually remember if there's a need to activate a bunch of them. But I'm pretty sure there is a mission that'll come up at some point that tells us to do that. And that's hopefully that'll jog my memory a bit more once we get up to that stage. So now we've turned our researcher on. Now the researcher runs continuously. So even if it's getting a very minimal amount of power because, your battery's flat or whatever, it will keep running just very, very, very slowly. And it will give you a certain amount of bytes, and it's the bytes that you use to unlock recipes. I'll go into that in a lot more detail in a future episode. Suffice to say at this stage, if you're a big fan of kind of advancing the tech tree, just research everything you can find is definitely the best way to go there. So we're just queuing up a new large platform. This will be where we end up putting the furnace. Now, with the researcher running and the medium printer running, we don't have a lot of power. You can see there, we're probably supplying maybe 20% of what we actually need. And you can already see how slow that printer is operating. But the printer will keep running whenever it's got some power. Oh yeah, and one thing I didn't cover off when I was talking about the backpack, at the bottom here there is a small printer. So pretty much everything you can print on the small printer, the separate one on the ground there, you can actually print on your little backpack printer as well. So you're just talking about the really small handy things like tethers and small batteries and oxygen filters, all of those little items. You can make those on your backpack and you don't need to be anywhere special to do that. Just make sure you're tethered so that you're not going to run out of power. I mean, there's been more than a few occasions where you'll find that I'll just go, like I'll pick a compass direction and I will just keep running in that direction and I will sort of live off the land, so to speak. So I'll mine compound to make more tethers, and then through that I get to explore more of the planet and hopefully find more of those useful little bits and pieces just to help me and my progression in the game. That will be something I would do in a future episode. So once again, if you are enjoying this content and you want me to do more, yeah, drop me a like and leave a comment down below to let me know. Now, the resources you come across do look a bit different to each other. So the one that we've been digging up here has been malachite, so it's like a green mineral. Malachite is what we can put in the furnace to make copper. And copper is going to be pretty important. Not so much right now, but if I, wait to start collecting copper until I actually need it, put it this way, it's better to have a couple with you already because it will help you out. It helps that sort of awkward phase because it'll let me make, slightly better, power generation or batteries or whatever to help me over this little kind of awkward phase with power. And that then feeds back into itself because I can, research more quickly. I can smelt more quickly. I can print stuff out more quickly. So yeah, don't ignore those extra resources. If you've got room on your pack to pick up a couple, I'd suggest doing that. Now, I put that research sample on the end there because once that research unit has finished with its current sample, as I said earlier, it runs continuously. So if you've got another sample on the same platform, it will actually pick it up and start researching it automatically. And so that's why I like those platforms, is I can put two, in the case of the researcher, I can put two big research samples on there, plus obviously the one that it's already researching, and then I don't need to look at it for ages. And just ticking away in the background, I'm getting all of those bytes, and it's not requiring any input from me until it's finished doing all of those samples. And then by then I probably find another 2 or 3, and then the process repeats. This episode, I'm mostly just focused on the basics, the navigation, how materials work, basic materials processing, that sort of thing. If we go ahead and do more episodes in the future, I'll do a detailed explanation about how the tech tree can be unlocked and, how the bytes can be used and the differences between the printers. All of that will be in episodes to come if you want me to go ahead and do more. So there we go, another example of getting rewarded for stuff that I was doing anyway. We had to just research, 10 things. In doing that, we now have 3 packets of tethers, and we've got 2 locators there, although that may have been from a different quest. The little locator beacons are not that relevant at the moment because our HAB unit has a little locator marker on it already. So it's pretty easy to find if we get sort of a little bit over the horizon. Those locators are more important. Like I tend to carry one on my backpack. In case I die, it makes it a little bit easier to get back to my backpack because I'll be able to see where it is from a lot further away. And later, when you get vehicles, yeah, you always put one of these on your vehicle in case you get sidetracked and you're not quite sure where you're parked. Yeah, little beacon there will help you get back to your chosen vehicle. So, yeah, very handy to have. Plenty more uses for those, particularly when you start going interplanetary. But while you remain on Sylvia, pretty much I just use it for my backpack and my vehicles. Now, I was originally aiming for a 30-minute episode, but through a bunch of audio issues, I literally redid all of this about 3 times before I resolved the audio problem. Unfortunately, it meant for some reason this time it took me a bit longer than the other two, so yeah, apologies for that. I'll try and keep that under control in future episodes. If you've enjoyed this episode, don't forget to give me a thumbs up and to consider subscribing if you haven't already done so. If you want me to do more of these episodes in the future, make sure you leave me a comment down below. And until next time, my name is Rudimentary Rob. Thank you very much for watching and have yourself an absolutely fantastic day.